Welcome to the building of the TLR 8ight-E 3.0. Thank you to Rob for sponsoring this episode on my YouTube channel. This is his kit. I am going to build it for him. So when I'm done, this is his, of course, but I get to unbox it, build it, and show it to you guys. Alright, on to bag B. It's the big bag. Lots of parts in it, lots of different baggies. So, we need the ring gear. So there's one right there. We need one of those pieces there. One of the drive axles. Oh, we have an extra one. Interesting. That must be for the center. A pinion piece, which we'll use later. So we're going to build this up. So they say, again, to use black grease underneath the washers. And I guess the washers are right here. So I do need to open this bag. This is B-4-1-1-E. Alright. So looking at the drawing here, we have the ring gear, a pin, a rubber O-ring, which you need to grease with some black grease, a washer, and the gear, as well as a bearing and the knuckle. So the bearings we use will be the big bearings, and they go around the outside before you do anything else. Now they don't show any washers on the outside here. Sometimes different manufacturers put them in. This one does not. Next thing we're going to put in is the dog bone cup. So that goes like that, and we can just stand it up on the dog bone cup. And to get our black grease out here, and we're going to put some in the groove here. Not too much, just a little bit. The O-ring goes over the drive shaft into that black grease, and then we're going to take a little bit of the black grease, just coat it at the top of it. This just stops any one, oil leaking through, and two, major wear against this little tiny shim. So if we can, good. If we can reduce wear, we're going to prolong the life of these parts. There we are. Push that down, and then we have one of these little pins. Are going to go into the shaft here. You can just lay that down. This is the easier one to do, as he says before he puts a pin in. Sometimes you have to make sure this ring is all the way down. Even that is going to be difficult, I see. So we get the pin in, like so. You might have to do a little work to finagle it. I'm going to give it a little spin, make sure it's working nicely. And then the gear goes on top. And that's as good as we need to go for that one. Next part is this cup. Again, very similar to that. We're going to build it the same way. We need the bearing, we need the cup. So the bearing goes in properly. Give the bearing a spin, spin nice and free. Put the other shaft in. Or give you this one too, that's not the right one. This is the one we need. So it goes in, like so. Little black grease. Now, hard to get in here, so I'm going to get a couple little blobs. There and there. The other O-ring. Mash that down. And a little black grease on that O-ring. Again, just to protect it. First couple of runs so it gets oil on it. And then the little washer. Now what's handy to push that down is the little cross wrench tool. Has the 8mm end. Put it over that washer and push it down. Make sure the O-ring goes all the way in. So there you go. Pro tip for you. Grab another one of those pins. We're just going to drop it inside. And grab our pliers. Tipping it down, making sure that it goes in at a bit of an angle. We're going to get it down and push straight down. Once it's straight down, it should go over without too much of a problem. That's the first shot. Again, I grab the pliers, put it down in, and it just went straight down, and it's self-aligned. So we can make sure that's good. No problems there. So there's those two pieces complete. And we turn the page on to V-3. This is where we assemble the diff. Again, I forgot to put that on. That just drops in there, and we just spin it until it falls in place. It should just fall in place right like that. And there we go. Now, they say when you're filling this here, to only fill it till it just comes above the gears, those planetary gears, which are these guys here. And these are the cross pins. So I'm going to take my oil, which is in a nice little bag here, to keep it from leaking everywhere. And probably when I undo this cap, I'm going to have to cut it open. I will. Because it's diff fluid, I'm going to cut it fairly large. Right above the threads. And we're going to fill this up. Now this is only 5,000 weight. So if you want heavier oil, you need to put it in. We're going to start with a default setup, but probably going to end up putting, probably 10,000 in the front minimum, 10,000 to 15,000 in the center, and about 2,000 to 3,000 in the rear. So to set up our cross pins and our planetary gears, and you can put one side in. Try to make sure that that little flat spot stays points up. And the second one, we'll flip these guys over. At this point, your hands are going to be covered in oil, but that's fine. And you'll see there's a groove there. Make this one point down the best you can. It will settle. And we'll put them in place. Give it a little push. And then give it a rear rotate. And it sits flat. Once it sits flat, let it sit for a minute. Clean your fingers off because it's nasty stuff. And let that sit. If you let it sit for a couple minutes, if you need to go get a coffee, whatever, and let the oil kind of percolate in. You'll see that it's not quite up to the top of the planetary gear, so I'm just going to add some more in once it decides to get down the tube here. There we go. And it's white, so I'll leave it like here. That's it for a moment. That looks pretty good. The next part is that little gasket. I'm just going to put it into the ring on the top section here. Spin it around until it's matching up with some holes. Just like that. No problem. And I'm going to put these together so the holes match up to there and to there. And you'll see that grease squirts out because there's too much in there. And so we'll just wipe it down. No problem. Now here is where, if you have one of these little fancy-dancy drills, it comes real handy. And the bits that go with it, because when you're screwing long things in and they don't require a lot of torque, these are great because they don't produce a lot of torque. They're very fine screws. What I'll do is I will put one part on, and you take one part on, and the other two, of course, I will move them most of the way. I hold this way, so when I decide to tighten, I'll just spin, and my fingers come very busy. And the other way, first way. I don't tighten these screws too much, because that will make it leak. Just till it stops is all we need. There we go. We can clean it off, set it aside, and it's ready to go. So in this part here, it's calling now for the Diff Housings. I'm just going to open this one up here. So this Diff Housing goes together like so. It's a front Diff Housing, you can tell because it's got an angle in the front here. It just locks in place. You just re-screw it, but it sits nicely. So this is where the pinion goes. The first thing I put in is the pinion gear, which needs one of these bearings. If you need help putting a bearing in, you can always run a screwdriver down. That has a nice flat edge. That helps you get that one in. And the other one goes in here. There we go. So next we have a pinion. So here's the pinion here. We put it into the first bearing and push it over the other side. To hold this in place, it's got a flat spot with a little ridge that this little cup here goes onto. And it just slides on like this. And we need some Loctite, so I'm going to again spray some of my brake cleaner on the part that it's going to go into. Wipe it off. Grab my last grub screw here and add some Loctite. That's just going to go on the face right there, and then make sure to line up that little groove and shove it in. Okay, keep it as tight as you can and tighten it down. That'll keep it there. So that's that part done. Next we need to put in our diff we built in the last step. And it can only go in one way because it's keyed. If you try to put it in backwards, it just doesn't go. And the bearings should drop into the ridges inside. Might have to be coerced a little bit. Make sure they're on the inside like that. There we go. And once they're down all the way, it makes good connection. You can feel that with the gear here. There's no backlash. Now they want to put black grease on some of these teeth. And what I'll do is I'll put a little glob every quarter or so, because it will move around, because it's got a small pinion and a larger spur. And then we put our outside case on, like so. Make sure it goes over. And then we need some screws. So two of the bottom ones are these guys here. You can see them go in there. And two uppers are these long ones. These screws. Here, you got two sides. There's one case. Okay, two afterwards. It goes here. And just close the case here. Don't use the feel driver above the net. And actually, go into almost here. And not for a second. Because you got two sides. This one. They go with the after. And these are so shame that Losi didn't go in the case. Sure, the name was anyway. That's okay. Again, just enough. Right, close the case. We're going to do anyway. I'm going to put the there we go. And there's that built. You can play with this, make sure everything's nice and tight. There's a lash. That's perfect. Next part are the CV assemblies. If I take a look here, here's the CVs under bag 2E. There we go. Again, they don't tell you where the parts are, so you kind of have to look around for them. But we have two different size bearings. We have a large bearing and a small bearing. The small bearing goes on the front side, or if you want to call it the outside side, fits in very nicely. And the big bearing goes in the back at the very out on the inside. You push it in as far as it'll go. If you want a little help, you can take this part here and slide it all the way in. Just give it a little push. That's what it should look like. Now these knuckles capture the pin for the CV by the bearing. So once it slides in, where the holes are there, captures the bearing, which we'll see in a moment. Once again, we need those shafts. So here's our shafts. Just check and make sure they're straight, and they are. And we need pins. There's our pins right there. There should be some barrels here somewhere too. There they are. There's one. and 2. And those are, guessing those are the pins there. So I'm going to open another bag of parts, which are going to have miscellaneous parts. If you're going to do this, I recommend getting a little tray so you can put these parts into and not lose them. So we take one shaft, like so, one barrel. It says here to add some black grease. So I'm going to add a little dab will do ya. Black grease on the barrel, mush it around a little bit, and that will slide in. Black grease is more just to help you keep everything together. Put it in the right way. It should line up ever so nicely. Just fill with grease, good. And then grab one of these pins, and this unit here, they slide together, and through the hole in the side, you should be able to see daylight through. I can see through both sides. I can see daylight on the other side. Slide the pin in part way, and you can have to wiggle this until it goes in properly. There we go. And then once it goes through the other side, you can see it there. Our piece is created. Now carefully get it into its bearing and carrier. Once it's in, it's now captured. And we'll run that bearing around, make sure it's good, it feels good. So there's all the pieces. And the other piece we need are these covers. And this is where that big pin comes in handy. We'll just take the nut case off. Slide this guy on here. And we'll slide this pin in. Make sure I don't lose it. There's that one. Now to keep this pin from falling out, we need a little grub screw. And they say use a Loctite. So some little ones, it's the big grub screws, the big black ones. And these guys are probably 5/64. Yes, they are. We're going to get some Loctite on here. Because these you only take off if you're working on suspension. And specifically the bearings in this carrier. And it just goes right in the end. And we just screw it up. And to give it a tighten, take one of your wheels out, put it over top of the hex, or take a pair of pliers carefully, and tighten it down. And put your wheel nut back over top just because it looks nice. So there's that. Now that can't come apart. That's one assembly. We do one more just like it. Pliers to make sure it's all tight, and there we go. We're going together, and there's that done. Set that aside, and we'll go to the next page. Now we're going to put the knuckles we just built in the last step on the arms. So the arms have a little bit of flashing we need to break off, which we can do with our fingers. And any rough edges we can clean up with a knife. So read the instructions, they go from the inside out. And when you put the small one in, the silver one, in where this cutout is, you see it just protrudes where the screw goes in. And the longer one on this side, because this is a thicker piece of material, and again it just comes out that side. And the little washers, part of the unit on the inside, should just slide in real nice. Now the screws that go in, long ones here which have the pan hit on them. So these black ones here, start with my fingers just to get them going, run them in with the drill most of the way. And we'll do the same on the other side. Now what I'll do is I'll just check to make sure they're tight, but not too. Now the next part are these kingpins that go through the top and bottom of this to put them in, or a wiggle to make sure they're in. There we go. And you can just see them go through to there. So one on the top, one on the bottom. Now the grub screws are these little tiny guys. They're little, silver. and they should be in the 5/64 to 1/16 size. There we go, 1/16 size. We don't need any goop on it because they're into plastic. And so we just tighten them up until they just touch. And once they touch the metal, you don't need to go any further. There should be a little bit of a gap on the top there. That's perfectly fine. Grab another one. And it goes on the bottom. Little holes for them. We just go in until the screw touches the metal. And these other two metal pieces, these are where the inserts go. One's a front and one's a rear. I'm going to get a drill, and we'll run these guys home on one side. I'll take the back side first, or the outside of the front side first. Okay, I don't like that screw fit, so I'm going to do this manually. Sometimes the screws fit nice, sometimes they don't. The Losi screws especially are bad for that. Some of them don't have deep enough holes, so you need to use a very precise driver. And we'll just put that one in like that. Grab another one of these screws. Put them in like that. We'll try the driver again. Yeah, they just don't like to go in. Again, we'll get near the end, and then we'll tighten it up like that. So there's that side. Now what they say is the front kick-up brace should have the number one insert in the up position. That means the number one, goes up. And so I'll put that in like so, on here, grab another number one, and put it in like this. So the two holes are in the up position. The inner front brace, or the rear brace, should have them pointing down to give us our maximum kick-up angle, because this one will be lower than this one. These ones, I'll put these in just by default to the down position. Okay, if you want to know which way is up and down on the bracket, this cutout is for the chassis. And now we need to set these guys up in such a way that we can put the arm and the knuckle in. So we need to get the hole in there, the drive shaft in, okay, on one side. And same thing on this side, the hole, and then the drive shaft. What we can do then is to put this in place. It's going to have to kind of hold your tongue just right so it doesn't come apart. I like to hold it up like this, and then we put it in like so, and then we can screw it all together. Go in, there we go. Do we have any spacers? It doesn't look like it. But there's quite a bit of play. Oh, it looks like it's going to go in one side or the other a bit more. Yeah. There we go. They're just tight, that's all. Once the screws go in, it should tighten right up. So what we can do is line these screw holes up, put them in like so, and run them home. Again, I'm not going all the way in, I'm just going until the drill feels the resistance, starts slowing down. And sometimes it doesn't like to go in the hole. There we go. And I like to do it with screws, just so they snug it up. There shouldn't be a ton of play in the arms side to side, but they should fall under their own weight. So if one sticks up, it should go away. Now I didn't have to put these in, because see they fall out pretty easy. But if you have them flat, you get some more stuff in, it'd be harder to get in. So I usually just tuck them in, make it look nice. We have the sway bar kit. And the sway bar looks a lot like that. And the bits for the sway bar are in bag B-6. And so we have these guys here, where they need grub screws, which are in this bag here. Open this bag the same way, I just poke through it, and I just pull it across. So lots of little parts here now, so they're going to start taking off on us. Now, I believe the silver ones go with these guys, the black ones go with the plastic. Again, they need Loctite, because they're going to go into something that is going to want to be stay put for quite a while. So, I'll add a little bit of Loctite. And before I get it going too crazy, why it doesn't show here, these are all metal parts, and they're coated in a little bit of rust stuff. So we give it a little clean off. And we'll start this grub screw. And then we'll put this on to the sway bar until it just pokes out, or doesn't poke out, but just flush with the end. So put my finger on the end, and then we'll put the grub screw point up for now, and go to the other one. I find they're easier to do these to the sway bar side first, and then slide it into the unit. And they're hard. It might be easier to take this off, put this one in, and use a pair of pliers, or if you have vice grips, because these are pretty handy as well. Just don't get your fingers pinched. I'm warning you now. This is where having 4 hands can be helpful. So, and there we go. And I'm just going to hang on to it and tighten it up. Come on. Now so I can click it in. Come on. There we go. There's one done. And now I can put this back on here and tighten up that grub screw. So it's about a ½ mil out. There we go. Now the next part we need to do is put these little balls into here. And a pair of pliers can do that just nicely. Kabonk. And those balls is what slides into the A-arms. There we go. Going from the front, we have 2 spots here, one here, that go over top of the drive shaft, and they slide in like so and like so. And this groove, oh, I see that they're labeled 27, so I'll make sure it's pointing up the right way. There we go. And this goes into this groove right here. Now we have some longer screws. These go in through there, and these 4 little screws with these 2 tabs here. And they also use the little black grub screws to tighten that down so it doesn't move around too much. So I believe these are 5/64 screws, if I'm not mistaken, and they are. And I will pre-screw this in, slide it over, and we'll just take it into the top of it. And we'll take it away, get close. So we'll do it. Screw, and we'll this will hold the bar in place for now. Take the bar in place, we'll back over there, and you can just put the fingers together, back into it. So you're taking it, and finger. If you're taking something, and plastic, you're screwing plastic, use your fingers, right? Insert it now. When you get closer, you can use your fingers. I'll insert something, like that, it's done. Okay, if you're tight, now the probably 1.5 millimeter, just get smaller, or you want to go so just run this in until they feel them stop, and then back up just a little bit, because you want this to move freely but not wiggle back and forth. So make sure it stays loose enough. You can feel it wiggle. Just go until it snugs it up, but doesn't tighten that up. And we'll grab the other one, like so, and we will put him in. Again, just so it backs up, then we'll back it up, make sure this moves nicely, and there we go. Next part, we'll put these guys in. That's these screws here. The front should be big enough where it slides in, and these should be 3 32nd size screws. Again, not tight, they're just holding them in. Finger tight. And this one here, same deal. So the last part we got to put on is a shock tower. And the shock tower goes in with some screws and some plastic plates, which are in one of these bags here. But it basically goes on like so. So like that. So we've got some plastic pieces to put on, screw those in with those 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. And then we've got to mount all the turnbuckles, which will be in the next video. So all the plus pieces are in there, I believe. We'll stop this one here because we've got enough done. If you have any questions, put them down below. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like the video, comment, share. All those good things are great. Again, wait for the next videos to come out. And I'll keep watching my channel. We'll talk to you later. Ciao for now.